It is a great honor for me to open this seminar on urban planning, rebuilding Ukraine, and planning processes and tools. We in FTU, Forum for Technology and Development Cooperation, is especially grateful towards Habitat Norway that took the initiative for this seminar series on rebuilding Ukraine. It has been truly inspiring to see the Norwegian civil society come together with us for this seminar on the long-term sustainable rebuilding of Ukraine. Our thanks go to the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprises, the Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Municipalities, and the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. A special thanks to our co-organizers, the Norwegian Society Developers, Habitat Norway, and the software company ITERA Norway. We in FTU would also like to thank the Swedish organization Innovation Leaders, who have personally mentored me throughout this highly innovative year. And finally, a very special thanks to the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and NORAD, the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, for being here today, as well as to our guests from Ukraine. To create strong urban planning processes, interdisciplinary teams are essential. And as you, CEO Aljona Kritschuk, mentioned to me yesterday, a central aspect of urban planning is fostering local democracy through user participation and community service. As you said to me, in the Soviet Union, there was no local democratic involvement in planning processes. Therefore, a sustainable urban planning is vital for strengthening free speech and building trust in local municipalities in Ukraine. We in FTU would also like to thank Asplan Viak. We are pleased to have CEO Per Christian Rangård here. How does it feel to lead 400 urban planners and a total of 1,300 employees working in interdisciplinary teams to create sustainable environments for thriving communities?
Thank you very much for the question. I think, first of all, I would like to say heartfully for me, welcome to Asplan Viak. We're very pleased to have this arrangement here and all of you guys here. Emergency exit is behind there if something should occur here, so just to be sure about that. And I would tell you this house, you are now in the garage. This is one of the oldest houses in Oslo, which have a long history behind itself. And we have our engineers, architects, planners in this house and live out the history of this house. So we're very happy to be in a house like this. And then your question. I'm very happy to have so many good employees. And we have a vision of developing the society and see the humans. And every day, I think our employees work with multidisciplinary approach. And that's, I think, is vitally important here in Norway. And of course, all the way applies in Europe as well. So again, thank you for being here. As Asplan Viak, we feel a lot with the things that are going on in Ukraine. And it's very meaningful to me to have an arrangement like this here. So, and I hope an arrangement like this and other things would kind of create a future that's much better than we are at the moment now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Per Christian and Anna, and their distinguished guests and friends here tonight. On behalf of Habitat Norway, I would also like to extend a warm welcome to this seminar. So thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. Since the invasion of Ukraine, the board of Habitat Norway has, through our advocacy work, stressed the importance of targeting development aid to support the reconstruction of the built environment. This in times of war, but also during other crises cities and local communities face across the world. This seminar is one of many events that we organize throughout the year on a volunteer basis, but the program this evening culminates our series on rebuilding Ukraine in particular, which we have hosted with a range of partners since 2023. So I hope you reach out to me or my colleagues to learn more about this work and our other activities. But for brevity's sake, I will first of all also just join and echo what all the thanks and gratitude to everyone's been involved in making this event possible. Especially the City of Oslo's International Development Department for sponsoring the seminar series, our collaborators, FTU, Asplan Viak, ITRA, everyone who's generously supported this event in some way or another. And of course, thank you to Folko and Anna and our other program participants who are here with us online from around the world, but Ukraine. And again, thank you to the Foreign Ministry of Affairs and NORAD. So without much further ado, it is with great pleasure that I welcome Mr. Christian Syse. He is the former ambassador and now the special representative for Ukraine at the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Christian, warm welcome.
Thanks a lot. Very pleased to be here. I'm impressed by the organizers, so thanks so very much. And there are many people here as well. I will seek to be within, I asked how many minutes I got, and I will be precise in 5 to 6, 7 minutes, but no more than that. So rest assured, there are many speakers here as well. I'm impressed by the speakers list, by the way. I will seek to make a few points. And the first point is, why are we there? Why does Norway care about Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Well, we believe in the freedom of peoples. We believe in the freedom of the Ukrainian people. But the main reason why we and so many other countries are committed to the freedom of Ukraine is that what happened in February 2022, perhaps already in 2014 as a matter of fact, was a blatant breach of international law and of the United Nations Charter. That's why we're there. The second reason why we're there is that this is of national security concern to Norway as well. This is no mean and this is no small happening in European history. It's an amazing act of breach of international law, and it's also a danger to Norway's national security. We're bordering the Russian Federation as well, and we know what it's all about. This and everything related to Norway's commitment to Ukraine you will find in a white paper in Norwegian Stortingsmelding. It has the number 8, and it was published to Parliament in February last year. It's 75 pages, filled with everything you need to know about Norway's relations with Ukraine, what is packed into what is known as the Nansen program. The amazing thing is that the Nansen program is its fundament is a unanimous support in Parliament. Nothing in a democracy happens in unanimity, but this has happened in unanimity. It's unanimous support by all the political parties in Parliament. And this year we have committed, you, taxpayers, have committed 85 billion Norwegian kroner, roughly $8.5 billion US, to the cause of Ukraine. That is #1 in the world per capita. For next year, Parliament is discussing its budget, the budget now, as you will know. Another 85 billion Norwegian kroner, $8.5 billion US, would be on the table and probably be decided by Parliament. Is it a good thing that Norway is the leading contributor per capita? It is not a good thing that Norway is the leading contributor per capita. The Nordic Baltic countries, they contribute 1/3 of all military assistance as we speak. That is not a good thing, it's a bad thing, because so many other countries should step up to the task. I'm not only talking about United States. So, how do we do this then? How does one put to use, intelligently, effectively, 85 billion Norwegian kroner? 85,000 million Norwegian kroner is an amazing amount, particularly in a country of 5.5 million people. 70 billion of those 85 would be committed next year to military means. We don't do that alone. Of course, we do that in close cooperation with our allies, with Ukraine itself, and in keeping with all the best practices in the field. I will not dwell too much on the military assistance here, because that is not really the case. That is not really the focal point of our exercise. So I'll spend my remaining 2 minutes on the following. Civilian assistance, $1.5 billion next year. How do we put that to use? Should we do it bilaterally with friends in Ukraine? Well, overwhelmingly, we do not. And the reason for that is that we believe in multilateral organizations. We believe in international financial institutions, the World Bank, the EBRD, and other international institutions. And that is how we also can help as much as possible in keeping with Ukraine's own needs, also in the field that we will discuss today. And we will continue to do so for many, many different reasons that we don't have time to discuss in detail. We are well aware of the RDNAs, the Rapid Damage and Needs Assessments, and what is the true ambitions of the Ukrainian government that we support fully. In conclusion, it's a long-run commitment. Parliament has accepted up until and including 2030. It will probably go beyond that because of the security cooperation agreement we've got. A broad engagement by the Norwegian civil society, as well as the government. Close cooperation with international partners, as well as national partners. We have as main channel the international financial institutions. And then the amazing unanimous support in Parliament, which is of enormous importance. So thanks a lot for inviting me. And what is really committing, and the important thing, is the unanimous support in Parliament that the government enjoys. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Armine Bagian. I have been researching and working on urban development and democracy building in Ukraine for a few years now, and I will be facilitating the first panel today. I would just like to ask our online speakers to stay until the very end. And during this session, we will hear from representatives of international organizations, Ukrainian state and academia representatives as well. And they will be talking about the urban dimensions of Ukraine's reconstruction path. And with this, I would like to pass the floor to Jan Peter Nure from NORAD. Please, you have 15 minutes, I think.
Yes. Can you hear me? Is it okay with the... Okay, fine. I want to take what Christian was saying down to some figures. So, can somebody... I don't know your code. Then, yeah. Okay. So, figures. I work in the reconstruction part of the NORAD program, and we are doing the civilian part. We are not actually dealing at all with the military part, which Christian was saying, but we have about $1.2 billion to our disposal. That's a tremendous amount of money, which the Norwegian Parliament has actually made available. And it seems like we'll have similar sums available next year. Very quickly look at the pie diagram. And you see the light green one is the biggest part of the civilian part. That is energy related, 44%. Then we have humanitarian, 24%. And then we have budget support, which is a very concrete and very important thing in order to simply make the Ukrainian state operate. Somebody has to pay for nurses, teachers, bus drivers, you name it. And then you see we have a little bit less going to private sector, which is economic support. And we also have part going to Moldova. And then we also have the yellow one, governance. But all in all, this is the overall picture which the NORAD Nansen team is actually dealing with. Now, I want to, before we go into the details about spatial planning and things like that, I want to draw your attention to a very interesting graph, which says something about, we have to put this in a historic context. Now, let's look at what has happened in the world when wars have taken place and what has been our experience with reconstruction after the wars. What happened in Europe after World War II, what happened in Japan, what happened in Rwanda, what happened in Bosnia, and what seems to be happening here. And I love figures, so this is, you know, this for me is, the red one is how much has been the contraction in GDP for each country, for each set of countries, whatever. And then the green one is simply what kind of growth rate have you had for the first 5 years after the end of the conflict? And very interesting, because really puts this in some kind of a context. Second World War, 40% of GDP of Western Europe destroyed, but coming back very quickly, the combination of international trade and the Marshall help. Japan, minus 50%, coming back 10 even more rapidly as a result of infrastructure and reforms, 10% per annum. Rwanda lost 60% of its GNP, but came back rapidly as a combination with reasonable governance and agricultural development. Bosnia-Herzegovina lost 75% and came back with 5% growth rates, and as a result of direct foreign investment and EU integration. And even while the war is going on, your GDP has gone down in Ukraine, but the average growth so far has been 4.5%. First quarter this year, actually, the question, it actually increased by 6%, but now it's in the very, very difficult situation we are now, it's going towards zero in the fourth quarter. But this, just bear this in mind. It's an interesting kind of context for what we are talking about. Now, overall roles of spatial planning in Ukraine's reconstruction. Why are we talking about this? And I know that all of you are experts. I'm just an observer from my position in NORAD, but I see that this actually is very important for strategic land use allocation, resilience infrastructure development, balanced regional growth, modernization, innovation, and community-centered recovery. These are extremely important things to get right in the reconstruction, and spatial planning is an important prerequisite for that. Now, to be a little bit more concrete, how does this affect specific areas that we're interested in? Energy. Spatial planning is extremely important for supporting decentralized renewable energy systems. I mean, just think about solar, wind has to do with spatial planning. And, you know, when you think about it, it's so obvious, and you have to get that right in order to get the future energy system up and running. Housing prevents informal settlements. All areas like that are directly feeding into the question of spatial planning. Economic development, again, restores livelihoods, rebuilds trust in institutions. And human capital, contributes directly to better outcomes of the processes. So here you see spatial planning has a role in all of these areas. And I will just give you an example of how we work with this. I just gave you the ideal situation. We are not working in all of these areas. We are working in 2 areas of this. We work with energy support and economic support for the private sector. So these are our way of reconstructing, helping to reconstruct. And here you see, if you go on the energy, and don't get me started on this because I'm really an energy specialist, but all I can say is that the key goes to purchasing gas just to make the energy system of Ukraine going. At the moment, the Russians have destroyed and bombed 60% of that energy, of that gas production. And we are helping them because gas, and for the Ukrainians in the audience, you know this better than anybody else, in order to get the heat going for almost 70% of the population, you need hot water, which you get from natural gas. So natural gas, decentralized production, and here we also have firefighting, because that's what you need to do. Apart from the gas, you also need other forms of helping to actually get the functioning after you bomb. The next day, somebody has to be there to get that up and going again. And similarly here, this is the absolute 44% of everything we're doing. But here on the private sector economic support, much less, but we do it through enterprise development support, Norfund, Exfim, war insurance, and blended finance. I will not go into all of this. Okay? Human capital in reconstruction. This is important because you need, for spatial planning, you need good people. You don't only need physical things, you need people who are bright, and that is very often the key problem. Namely, we have to train people and we have to have the best kind of human capital in order to get a reconstruction, a meaningful reconstruction going. You sent me some questions. You sent me 3 questions. Is there any chance of getting support for 3 concrete things? Mobilizing popular support, participation in spatial planning, build professional competence, and data collection. So very clear, very good questions to me. Is there any chance of getting support for that spatial planning that actually has these 3 elements? And unfortunately, we not have any support mechanisms that finances any of these 3 activities today. So it is, if such an opportunity should arrive, it would most likely be linked to human capital and capacity building. But at the moment, my somewhat not positive feedback to you is that there is no money at the moment that directly supports spatial planning, okay? But this, as I said, human capital is probably the best way of thinking about getting support if this should ever be on the table. Because architects, specialists in spatial planning are the core of the core. Without those human capital, you will not ever manage to get anything done. So my conclusions are clear connection between spatial planning and reconstruction. We are totally aware of that. We are totally aware of the importance of that. Nonsense programs links primarily the 2 through what we are doing on energy and on economic support, economic development. Key role of human capital in reconstruction, not only physical things, but actually people and their capacity. Unfortunately, no financing or spatial planning in the present Nansen program, but if such an opportunity should arrive, it would most likely be linked to the human capital and the capacity building element of the story. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentations. There will be, I will be asking you some questions at the very end of this panel. Yes, and now the next speaker is joining us online. Please welcome Debashree Podar from World Bank. Debashree, you also have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm assuming you can hear me. All right, everyone. So my name is Debashree Podar. I am representing the World Bank's Urban Land and Resilience team that works in Europe and Central Asia region. I'm also co-leading our housing engagement in Ukraine, as well as the very nascent now local and urban engagements in Ukraine as well. The objective of this presentation is twofold. First is to walk you through the key findings from the RDNA4 report. And the second is a more dedicated part of the presentation on the importance of supporting at the local level, the importance of having a differentiated and a targeted approach, and to share our understanding of very high level gaps that currently exist in local support for recovery and reconstruction. So with that, let me start with the first part, which is the key findings from the Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment. This Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment, or the RDNA, is a joint effort between the government of Ukraine, the World Bank, the United Nations, as well as the EU. But before I get into the numbers of the damage and the needs, it's important to first of all highlight that there has been an immense human, social, and economic toll, first of all, due to the invasion and since February 2022. Primarily, there's been large-scale displacement. So there's 6.2 million externally displaced people or refugees and 4.6 million registered IDPs. And of course, the speakers before me have already mentioned that there has been a lot of economic toll in terms of increase in poverty rates as well as inequalities, where vulnerable groups have been hardest hit. The RDNA assessments have typically been conducted on a yearly basis. It's a very rapid assessment that is carried out across 20 sectors, and it's mainly based on estimates and high-level data that's provided by the government as well as external sources. As of December 31st, 2024, the overall direct damage has been around $176 billion US, and it has increased since the previous year where we did the RDNA 3. In terms of reconstruction and recovery needs, the overall estimate is $524 billion, which is huge. The reconstruction and recovery needs are much higher than the damages because they factor in modernization, upgrades, as well as Build Back Better approaches and things like inflation, surge pricing, etc. So the 524 is the overall needs across a 10-year period. In terms of disaggregation of the damages, more or less, the damage remains concentrated in the frontline regions as well as the Kievska region. And in terms of the sectoral disaggregation, the housing sector has been the most impacted, followed by transport, energy, and then commerce, industry, and agriculture. This graph basically highlights the fact that the damages are increasing, but the damage across the sectors remain more or less the same, wherein housing, transport, energy take up bulk of the damage. In terms of needs, it's very much correlated with the damages again, where housing and infrastructure sectors such as transport and energy have the maximum amount of needs. And since the start of the invasion, up until December 31st, 2024, there has been a lot of support to Ukraine, and an estimated 13 billion US dollars of needs have already been met in these very priority sectors such as housing, education, agriculture, and energy as well. Now, this is the overall picture or the context of the damage and the needs. Now, moving to why do we need to support local governments and why are they so important and why do we need to strategically engage with them? This is on account of three reasons mainly. The first is out of the $176 billion in damage, a third, which is 33%, is for assets that are locally owned or operated. By local, I'm referring to the fundamental unit of local self-governments, which in Ukraine is the Hromadas. So a third of the damages, a third of the assets need to be recovered and they need to be done by the local governments. In terms of needs, it's around $95 billion. And importantly, out of those, $11 billion of estimated needs are just for debris removal and debris management, which is caused by the overall damage, and which falls under the direct responsibilities of the local governments or the Hromadas. So this is reason number one. A lot of the damage and the needs are concentrated in local governments. The second is that there is an urgency for Ukraine to join the EU. And for this reason, the focus on the local level is key because the path to accession depends on how the local governments will employ and implement EU requirements. So we understand that there's been a large volume of reforms that are being undertaken currently at the national level, which need to align with EU requirements. But it's important to understand how Hromadas will be able to adapt and implement those national level reforms and the policy framework across the entire realm of their responsibilities. The third and final reason is that the pace and the quality of the reconstruction and recovery that will take place will be determined largely by the Hromadas. So Ukraine plans to double its absorption capacity in the next 2 years. And we need to understand that in most cases, the Hromadas or the local governments are responsible for implementing those projects and those programs on the ground because they are closest to the people and the beneficiaries. But at the same time, this project implementation capacity is very much constrained at the local level, especially if we talk about Build Back Better approaches. We see that Hromadas and local governments do not have the technical capacity to integrate those approaches. They don't have the technical know-how, for example, on integrating energy efficiency, on integrating universal accessibility, etc., which are key requirements and fundamental to donor financing moving forward. And therefore, it's extremely necessary to now focus and support Hromadas now more than ever because they will determine the path to accession, because they will determine the quality of the reconstruction and recovery that happens moving forward. Now, despite the importance of Hromadas and despite how much we focus on planning, we focus on investments, it's also important to understand just the strain that local governments and Humada governments are under currently. So the scope of responsibilities that they had prior to the invasion was already huge. And now, due to the invasion, that's become even greater. So initially, they were responsible for delivering services, critical infrastructure, which included investments in assets, which included the operation and maintenance of assets, including capital repairs, um, and then service delivery, of course, and last mile connectivity of critical infrastructure. They were responsible for local budget management, collection of revenues, taxes, fees, etc. They were responsible for local planning, which includes spatial planning, strategic planning, land use planning, capital investment planning. They were responsible for implementing state social assistance programs and for provision of administrative services like issuing permits and licenses, managing civil registration, etc. Now, what has happened since the invasion? Uh, all of these responsibilities have been exacerbated. So, firstly, now Humaras are also having to provide emergency services, rehabilitation services, and urgent repairs. They have to provide additional services, especially in the local governments where there's a huge presence of IDP. So more people coming into their jurisdiction, therefore more service delivery requirements per capita. And then they have to implement all of these state programs and reforms that are being undertaken at the national level. And they have to, of course, plan and implement all the projects that are happening on the ground. Now, as Romaras do this, it's extremely important to understand that they have faced massive, massive shocks in terms of changes to their population, changes to their demographic profile, and changes to their economic base. So many Homaras have lost a significant proportion of their population with no guarantee that the people are going to return. And global experience suggests that typically refugees do not tend to come back to their place of origin. The second is that many Romadas, while many have lost a lot of population, many have already also gained population suddenly with the incoming IDPs or internally displaced people. And there is again a large likelihood that a significant proportion of the IDPs would continue to reside in their new local governments or new Humaras. The demographic profile is also shifting in terms of age distribution and gender profile, and jobs have moved from the east to the west. So it's important that as we think about the planning and the strategic investment process, that these factors are very much taken into account so that future investments can be planned in a way that targets the beneficiaries that are actually present in those local governments. I won't get into each and every aspect of these responsibilities, but I would like to highlight two. So the first one relates to the service delivery. And I'm sorry, the slide is really packed, but it is intentionally so, just to show you the range of services that Humaras are providing. So this includes water supply, it includes housing, it includes district heating, health, culture, transport, education, civil protection, emergency response, and various other sectors come into play at the local level. So the main point of this is that we cannot approach our support at a sectoral level. It needs to be a very integrated, place based approach because at the end of the day, the space accounts for all the sectors and the beneficiaries or the citizens benefit from uh, each and every one of these critical sectors and each and every one of these infrastructure sectors. But at the same time, it's important to understand that the service delivery and the critical infrastructure um, was already deteriorating prior to the invasion. It was aging and vulnerable because of decades of underinvestment and poor asset management. And this has been exacerbated again by the invasion because now there is just a because the asset base itself has been depleted. The public service delivery coverage was also low initially. and that has again been exacerbated and become even lower. And therefore, while infrastructure has been depleted, in certain Homada, service delivery needs have expanded, especially in those which have a lot of IDPs. So there is an extreme urgency to focus on the local level and in particular Homadas or particular local communities. Experience from post-conflict situation across the globe highlights that it is important for local recovery and restoration of public local services to attract businesses to come in and continue to function, and to make sure that the people who are residing there continue to have an adequate standard of living. My second example is regarding local planning and its quality, and I'm sure the speakers after me would speak a lot more on this, but I do want to highlight 2 points here. Firstly, that local governments, of course, they have to do the spatial planning. And spatial planning is extremely important because it is very much the fundamental base for the recovery and reconstruction that will take place and that is taking place currently.
I'm very sorry,
one of the-
Debashri, but can you please like wrap it up in a minute or two?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Of course. Yeah. So spatial planning is extremely important because things like land plot allocations, construction permits are very much aligned to the local spatial plans. And the design of the construction projects themselves have to align with the planning conditions and the restrictions based on local spatial plans. As of now, less than 10 Homadas have approved CPSDs, which is the primary planning document, but these are also extremely technical and they are very cost prohibitive, which currently Homadas are unable to rise up to. Now, in terms of strategic plans, these are very important for recovery because they will determine how the financing is used and in what way. And so strategic planning is right now, Homadas have been asked to make the midterm plans, which are aligned with the public investment management reforms. But what is unsure of is the quality of these plans, right? So we need to make sure that the quality is there and it's aligned with the actual needs at the local level. With that, I want to also highlight that it's important to undertake a differentiated approach. When we talk about Homadas, we cannot equally and at the outset support each and every one. And so it's important to understand that there are different needs across Homadas. And here it's important to understand the difference between the urban Homadas and the town and the rural Homadas, which are very different in terms of capacities that they have, as well as the number of people that they cater to. Specifically, urban Homadas have been most impacted by the invasion. 4 out of 5 damaged housing units are in cities, which means that cities have sustained most of the damages that we see across the RDNAs. Interestingly, also, cities are serving a much larger share of the IDP population. There's a huge correlation between IDP presence and the pre-invasion population of Homadas, which means that the largest concentration of IDPs is in cities that already had a large pre-war population and those cities which are actually closer to the front line. So there is a dual challenge over here, which is that these cities are more damaged, but they're also catering to more number of people, and therefore they need really urgent support and need to be prioritized currently. I won't go into the details of this, but these are the high-level gaps that we are seeing. But it is important to understand that the gaps need to be addressed not just at the local level, but also at the national level. And while donor support is essential, as the donor community, as the IFI community, it's important to have coordinated engagements so that there are no overlaps, there are no redundancies, and we don't increase burden on the local clients and on Ukraine. This is my last slide, and this is just a
Debashri, I
framework.
think, unfortunately, we are short on time. So if you don't mind, maybe we can move forward. But please stay until the end of the panel discussion, because there will also be question addressed to you, and maybe you can cover the slide then. Thank you very much. And so the next speaker is joining us online as well from Ukraine. It's the CEO of the State Geocadastre of Ukraine, Mr. Dmytro Makarenko. So please, the floor is yours. So you have 20 minutes according to the program, but if you can keep it shorter, we will really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will try to do my best to keep it short. Just a second, I will share my screen. Yes. Yeah, I hope that you are able to see it. So I will start from a brief introduction of myself. My name is Dmytro Makarenko. I'm chairman of the State Service of Ukraine for Geodesy, Cartography and Cadastre. And today I will talk about data access and needs for improvements. But prior to start my presentation, I want to send a compliment to previous presenter, to Debashri, because it seems to me that she showed a very deep knowledge of the current situation of Ukraine in terms of territorial communities or hromadas. And I'm really literally impressed of what she demonstrated as a part of the analysis. But now we'll talk about data, about access. A lot of words were said about the damage and recovery in terms of losses from the housing, stock, transport infrastructure, and energy. So I'm not going to repeat that. This is our statistics that we found at the report of the Kyiv School of Economy regarding the damage dedicated to different sectors, important sectors of economy of Ukraine. And also I would like to pay the attention that the huge amount of losses was dedicated to the housing sector. And it is very important to understand in which way to address these challenges and these damages. In Ukraine, it is very important to have the up-to-date data to be able to make a real assessment and plan the recovery and compensation mechanisms to those who suffered from such losses and damages. But unfortunately, as of now, Ukraine has introduced the martial law starting from the first day of invasion, which means that a lot of restrictions were introduced to the data also, and to the process to access the data as well. And in terms of State Geocadastre, as we are the National Mapping and Cadastre Agency, we are responsible for cartographic registries of the country. We were obliged to close the public cadastral map from the open access. We were obliged to close the State Geodetic Network, the National Spatial Data Infrastructure Geoportal, and from the open access, and respectively the martial law influenced also on the geoportals of other central and local data holders. So everything is closed from the public access, but still I would like to mention that talking about state land cadastre, we do have online services working. We do provide citizens and business with online services. It is possible to connect state land cadastre within the signed agreements and some data security settings. As well as an SDI geoportal. It doesn't have the public access at the moment due to martial law, as I mentioned, but it is possible to monitor the data, to access the geoportal if you are registered according to the procedure. General information about scales of the topographical maps. Why I'm talking about topographical maps? Because previous presenters told that hromadas are responsible to create the territorial complex planning for the territories of hromadas. And basically, the one element that they need is the good qualitative topographical base under it. And in Ukraine, we do have several levels, like national level and local level. And you may see the national level for which my organization is responsible. Unfortunately, the situation is not very good with the coverage of the qualitative topographical map. We have the full topographical base only in scale of 1 to 50,000, which was done due to the huge support from the Norwegian government and ended in 2021. Basically, in a very early period of 2022, we were able to publish this state topographical map in the open access, but luckily we didn't do it before because it was quite before the invasion, and we now just stored it on the national geoportal without any open access to this information. All other scales which are more detailed are in process. I'm talking about 1 to 10,000 because it is the most detailed scale for which the state is responsible. Regarding the topographical maps for urban planning, as I mentioned, the 1 to 10,000 is used as a basic topographical map of Ukraine. It has good enough detailing for the planning of the territorial development, engineering and construction projects, and monitoring of the landscape changes. All other scales are much more detailed and they might be used for some energetic sector planning, for some utilities planning, and for the just local needs issues, and but they are very much expensive in production. This slide is very interesting actually, because due to the martial law again, we have the restricted airspace in Ukraine, which means that no IRL photography is possible across the country. Only some drone IRL photography in some areas with special orders, or only satellite imagery of very high resolution, which allows the rapid creation of high resolution and up-to-date topographical maps, and also to assess the damages and other very important issues. On the right corner in the top of the slide, you may see the fragmented coverage of Ukraine with the materials at a scale of 1 to 10,000, actually, which were created either by territorial communities or by state geocadastre within these 3 years. So you may see that the coverage is not very good, and of course it is not enough to cover the demands of all users. At the bottom of the slide, you may see the map layout of the topographical map in the scale of 1 to 10,000, which are stored at the State Cartographic Fund of Ukraine, but they are not in the form of the digital base map. They are in the form of the cartograms, which were created many years ago, but still they may be utilized as the outcome materials for the updating of the topographical base. Updating the cartographic coverage. Actually, we are very much active about this project, and it is very important because 1 to 10K topographical map is a source of fundamental geospatial data. It is the base for the planning and city building cadastre, and it is the base for the natural resources cadastres as well. And we consider that the main stakeholders, apart from the territorial communities, of course, are State Geocadastre, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Economy and Environment, and Ministry of Communities and Territorial Development of Ukraine. We do consider, apart from the state-funded works, which we are doing for the state budget starting from the 2023, we do consider in the nearest future to conduct the negotiation and to launch the pilot project, which might cover at the pilot 2 oblasts as a whole, and then during the second phase we do want to roll out this pilot project for 10 oblasts. The funding is not fixed yet. We are still negotiating with different partners, and that we will be supported in this activity. Another very important issue is the verification of the damaged and destroyed property. The Ministry of Infrastructure is responsible for this, and you may see the algorithm how this is done if the territory is occupied or it is impossible to conduct the physical or remote assessment of the by the special commission. In this case, if the physical assessment is not possible, but the physical or citizens applies for the compensation, the images actually shall be requested from the State Space Agency or from the State Geocadastre. And then based on the images, the Commission may take the decision on the compensation of the destroyed property. And this is where the bottleneck is, because a lot of requests are coming from various territorial communities to State Geocadastre to conduct the analysis of the materials which are available at the State Cartographic Fund of Ukraine and to provide these materials. And if you remember the cartogram that I demonstrated to you on the previous slide, we are lacking of materials in the State Cartographic Fund, and our progress in development of such materials is very low, and it is not insufficient to cover the demands of all involved parties. That is how the State Cartographic and Geodetic Fund is working. We do collect the materials which are created in online platform, and we are providing these materials for those legal entities or those citizens who may request these materials for additional use, reuse, and other important things. But again, the fullness of the State Cartographic Fund, it is not enough for all such kind of demands. The National Geoportal of NSDI, it is operational. It is in industrial operation already. We do have a lot of different topographical data and land cadastral data on it. The access is restricted, which is logical due to martial law. Now we are thinking of liberalization of access to this data, but still we are trying to not only to add additional data, but also to work with the case studies, so-called case studies at the National Geoportal, which means that we combine different geospatial data in between and present this combined data in form of the use cases for the usage. There are the crop monitoring, there are land parcels, they are the medical network buildings, there are the territories which were liberated or territories which were under temporary occupation, which means that territories which are blocked. All these data are stored at the National Geoportal of NSDI. Topographical mapping. As I mentioned, this work is very tough, and we only 3 years are working under this strategic project. Why 3 years? I don't know, frankly speaking. When I was appointed, I put this one as a priority for my personal achievement, and as you may see, we started in 2023 with very low progress, and we achieved only 5% from the planned volume, but already in the 2024 last year we made 100% of planned materials done, and this year I hope and I'm sure that we will do another 100%. But still, it is not sufficient. It is not enough. We are not able to cover the needs for the whole country within that limited budget that we have, unfortunately. 1 to 2000 scale topographical map, it is out of the competence of State Geocadastre. But again, if talking about the urban planning, recovery, effective decision making, such very detailed topographical maps are definitely needed for the territorial communities and for municipalities. The same thing with the 1 to 500. Despite that State Geocadastre is not responsible for this kind of map, the State Cartographic Fund contains a lot of materials in such scale. And of course, we do provide such materials for those organizations who really request such materials for reuse. Some conclusions in the end. To my opinion, the main challenge is not in the mechanism to access the data, because even with the martial law in force, we do have some methods to provide this data. The main challenge is in the data itself, because Ukraine is huge. The data are somewhere outdated, somewhere they are absent at all, and we need to create this data. Another conclusion is that our progress, which we are leading by our own, is not sufficient and may not satisfy the demand of all target groups. I mean, the territorial communities, other ministries, just citizens, and etc. It is very important to merge the international efforts with the UA-funded efforts to ensure the reasonable schedule of data update and at least to sort out the midterm perspective for such kind of the work. And again, despite the data restriction, there are still very working mechanisms to receive the data for reuse and other related activities. We need just do it. That was my slide, last slide. So thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Much. I think the work you have been doing is extremely impressive, especially considering the not so easy times. And the last speaker of this panel is Alexander Anisimov from Aalto University and the Kharkiv School of Architecture. Please, Alexander, the floor is yours, and you have 20 minutes. But again, if you keep it short, it would be nice.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Because we had blackouts today, so I'm not sure if the internet is well. Yeah, I will try. Please tell me when 3 minutes are left, so I will rush towards the end. Again, thank you for having me today here. It's an honor to be part of the seminar, and I hope the stakeholders will also value the input we are trying to provide you. So I will be talking about land and property on the side of development. My background is spatial planning. I'm a doctoral researcher at the Aalto University in Finland. I'm head of an NGO, and also I'm leading a small research organization in Ukraine. And there is this international symposium which takes place annually, named Rebuilding a Place to Call Home, where we invite a lot of experts and a lot of professionals to work on the issues of recovery. My point here is provocative, but I think it's valuable that you will, let's say, see it also from my perspective here. So one thing we haven't been shown about RDNA is the amount of money per sector that is being put down in the single project pipeline as the main funding vehicle in Ukraine. So imagining the whole, let's say, state projects funding focus is distributed in these categories. And RDNA shows that just over 4.8 billion USD dollars has been placed down in the SPP projects. And the damages that has been mentioned are above 180 billion and are rising. So this is a very minuscule amount of funding that has been placed from the public side. Why is that? This is a long question, a long story, but I wanted also to show you another thing from the SPP project pipeline is how many projects are funded in this system and how many projects are not. So the latest data available from RDNA shows us that only 9% of the projects placed in the housing sector are actually funded by donors or by the government, and 91 remain stalled in the system. So this is something that shows us there is a huge absolutely huge gap and unmet need in housing recovery, and also in parallel the inability of public stakeholders to actually do anything about it. At the same moment, we see something also peculiar, which is I'm framing as favor of Build Back Better. Maybe it's a bit provocative, too much, but what I feel is we see let's say a backslash or a disastrous type of reconstruction taking place, which is ecologically destructive. This is all unrecyclable, non-circular, non-bio-based, fossil fuel generated plastic paints, insulation systems, buildings still reliant on gas, as you see the pipeline. So what we are experiencing here is that there also is little to no community development. There is absolutely no investment in public space. And these are the buildings that were to be shown or are shown by the national agency as case studies of how we are rebuilding Ukraine, how we are supporting its recovery. I mean, this looks like Central Africa. And I'm not joking. I mean, it might look funny or might not sound funny, but this is where people will live. And this is where places that were either damaged or destroyed. This is also happening with the EIB funding. I mean, this, for me, it would be unpleasant to stand there with all of the UN flags, US flags, European Investment Bank flags, and to present this project as a good case. This is indeed something that we are facing all over the country, is that a lot of money being put into a very narrow thinking, into a very poor project design, into a very poor, let's say, mindset and preparation pipeline, and being actually invested. So at the same time, while we have a gap in the services and housing investment, the money that is being spent not really well, I would say. I have a few ideas or a few, let's say, comments on how to stop this nonsense from continuing. Of course, this is my suggestions as an expert, and I'm not talking about that this would be a solution to every ills in the country in the recovery process. However, we should take a note. So my point would be placing the question of land and housing in the center, and how. We already have I'm sorry to invoke Danish people in the Norwegian event, but Dan Jorgensen, who is the EU Commissioner for Energy and Housing, the European Commission is responsible for delivering EU housing plan. Why I'm talking about it? Because we are joining the EU, and because the EU is let's say, our flag for investment. It's our key stakeholder. It's the, let's say, system of institutions that we want to follow. And if we are not able to achieve any serious work towards it, we will not be able to join you. But also there is a reflection within the EU about its failure to create affordable housing, its failure to support population, and they're trying hard at the moment to reverse the system. So what has been happening, the latest is just published a few days ago, the high-level housing advisory board on the European level delivered recommendations to the European Commission. And this is the latest, the top of the class, the most evidence-based, whatever you call it. It is top-class evidence on housing that exists in the world at the moment. And this is pointing us to 10 key recommendations, 5 of which I want to, let's say, discuss in a few seconds and relate to Ukraine directly, right? So first, housing is an infrastructure. It's not a private good. Measuring affordability is by creating an understanding of its lifetime costs, about quality of neighborhood, about the quality of infrastructure, prioritizing reuse and regeneration over sprawl and greenfield development, speeding up planning without weakening planning standards, and scaling up rental housing with long-term patient capital from long-term investing hands and vehicles rather than relying on private capital. If we take these 5 recommendations and think them through, what would it mean to build such a system in Ukraine and not deliver all of this nonsense recovery funding that we are happening here? So we know land has, let's say, 2 major thinking modalities and uses, right? One is the consumption good, where people experience home, personal security, and place of well-being, often lost due to rocket farm, missiles, barrages, and so on. And another one is housing as a financial asset, as a source of collateral, as a stock of wealth, as people in Norway know very well. It's a country with one of the highest level of private property in housing. And these things are in contradiction. You can hardly deliver both. So one should give way to another or the way around. If we think about housing as a social infrastructure, we think about housing as systems and networks that deliver community obligations, that address various environmental and social goals, that have issues of monopoly access. And there is many, many things which mean that infrastructure is needed to be governed by regulation and reporting. It cannot deliver itself. It's not a magic capitalist market system which just creates things out of a plant where the televisors are assembled. It's a system that has to be supported by public regulation, public investment. Then what follows from that, it basically needs policy and public governance. And if we know that free market hasn't been able to provide housing for low and middle income groups, then managing housing will require public investment and public management to deliver anything nearly looking like a livable city and nearly looking like a sustainable recovery, which has enabled people to access housing within their financial capacity. At the same moment, this is what market delivers in Ukraine at the moment. And clearly, it's a race into the bottom in the use of land, in the quality of environment, in the accessibility, in the function and use of it, because it's not delivered where it's needed, it's not delivered for those who need it, and it's not delivered according to any environmental and social standards. If we look back at the recommendations given by the high-level task force on housing to the European Commission, they have a long list of those recommendations, but I just wanted to pinpoint a few of those that are related to land. First of those is number 20, for instance, where they highlight that it is not possible to deliver affordable housing, and in case of Ukraine, to recover or create affordable housing for those who lost it or who have now had it without proactive land use tools to deliver. If those land use tools are to be used, they, of course, are used by the municipalities. They are not used by private actors by their own behalf. How those tools are used and for what reason, there is another point of recommendation is about land value capture. Because we often know that development, especially in the regions which are safer in Ukraine, is much about speculation and rather not about creation of affordable housing. This means that there is a very high level of land, and land increases are not captured by the government or by the municipality. They remain in the hand of the landowners, and landowners win because of people's migration to the west of Ukraine, because the pressure of housing markets, because of the people being squeezed out of their rental flats. Because of a lot of reasons, this value remains within the private landowners' capacity and not given back to the government to support infrastructure or develop affordable housing. Clearly, this also leads us to understanding that inclusionary zoning mechanisms are crucial because at the current moment and as a legacy of the Soviet Union, housing was seen to be equal for everyone, but of course the economy of housing makes housing inaccessible, and without inclusionary zoning mechanisms, which are here to be employed across Europe, not just for the case of Ukraine, that will enable spatial planning to require privately built housing to dedicate affordable housing units or affordable and social housing construction for those lower and middle income groups who really, really need access to housing. This similarly relates to public land management and public land banks, because relying only on this managerial model of spatial planning regulation will never be enough if the municipalities don't own land, if they don't know how to bank it, how to use it with a longer term perspective. They will not be able to create these necessary conditions for affordable housing, which is also very reliant on access to cheap land with a competitive advantage being affordable, being created for social value. And summing it up, because we really are short of time in this seminar. Of course, I can talk a bit longer on all of these issues. So if you want a sustainable and just recovery focused on, let's say, access to housing, you would need to develop affordable rental public property, not private property, with mechanisms of value capture and non-market access to land. So this is the sort of a very, very, very brief summary of the high-level recommendations, which are not being reflected in Ukraine. Apparently, Ukraine is learning from the worst. So we have two major systems in place. One is similarly thought through as Yevvidnovlення. This is a first level system, I would say. This first level system is about public funding being dedicated to people's requests for compensation for the housing that has been either severely damaged or destroyed by the Russian invasion. While in theory, a very interesting tool, a very fair one. In practice, it leads us to the exactly undesirable consequences that we are facing now. It is commitment to rebuilding as is, within the same parameters, within the same price, within the same quality of environment, not as needed or not as better. These vouchers are territorially unconstrained. So you can bring your voucher to any region you want, to use them to develop or to kind of buy out a housing unit wherever you want across Ukraine, which obviously leads to already frail regional development schemes and further degrades municipal fiscal capacity, because you can easily move from the places that actually need your taxes, actually need your work, need your support, to places where it's easy to start, let's say, some sort of a new, let's say, life after the destruction. There is no quality control of these funds. So if the flat has been delivered, if the building has been done, it's done. The box is ticked. It's also unable to fund or recover collective property objects, so such as stairs, roofs, lifts. So if municipality is unable to support it with its own funds or find a donor, you are stuck, and people are just leaving this place and using these territorial constrained vouchers to leave for Lviv or Kiev or any other place they would like to start again. And of course, there is zero interest in the conditions of renters. So a lot of people who have been friendly.
Can you please wrap up?
They are leaving. They're left with nothing. And the second system is the system of the second level, as I say. It's Yeosela. It's a leaky system of mortgages, quite famously supported by the World Bank, but currently also constrained because the system is based on public debt. So essentially, government creates new debt to fund its mortgage systems, which goes to middle level and wealthy people who don't own a lot of their own property. And of course, there is a lot of issues with a lot of money going for shareholders because banks are involved. There is also developers' incomes that are not really constrained. And households basically can sell the flat after 10 years the way they want. So it's only a temporary limitation on the property. So both of these systems are not really supportive of a fair and just recovery. And the same way Ukraine plan, where it has a housing component, it has no spatial dimension. It doesn't understand about how to place the new housing system in space. And going to conclusions, basically, there are several points. One is that we have a problem of land use not being addressed by donors or by the state, and this leads to a lot of unresolved property issues blocking project development. We've seen urban design and project quality being quite low and not being really supportive of Ukrainian recovery the way people would like to see it. And I wanted to say just a few words about what I see as the next steps for all of us and for Ukrainian, let's say, recovery components regarding land and property in housing, is that municipalities need to be allowed new land use instruments and powers. This, of course, requires regulatory control change that enables municipalities to pursue those new developments. There is a need for national rental housing development in accordance to EU recommendations and not reliance on recovery based on mortgages and private capital flying around. And this is underpinned, as our previous speaker said, by increasing public capacity, especially in relation to land and property management on the local and national level, which would support a fair and consistent recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I think it was extremely interesting to listen to your critical points and your suggestions. So I have prepared 2 short questions to our speakers, but before asking those questions to them, I just would like to briefly highlight that. So first of all, thank you everyone for really timely and insightful presentations. And I just want to highlight that during these almost 3 decades of independence of Ukraine has, of course, registered major progress in many different fields, but there were also kind of many lessons learned of what works and what doesn't work, both for Ukrainian institutions and for international partners. And I really hope that this rebuilding process of Ukraine, all the actors involved, they will act in a more conscious and collaborative way. And I also want to stay hopeful and optimistic that the rebuilding of Ukraine will create a model of kind of new approaches in urban planning and government and governance that can be followed by other so-called post-Soviet countries and countries in the wider region. So with that in mind, my first question goes to, maybe we can have the speakers on the screen again. Okay, so my first question goes to Jan Peter and Debasri. So both NURAD and the World Bank, of course, they had to adjust the way they work with the Ukrainian government and civil society when the large-scale invasion started. And I just wanted to ask in NURAD and World Bank, are there already kind of discussions how these organizations will be dealing with Ukrainian government and civil society in the post-war reality? Are there any lessons learned that will kind of guide you in the future? Maybe we can start with Jan Peter, like two minutes.
Thank you. Our guiding principle is very much the demands from Ukrainian government. So we are not in the business of telling Ukraine how they should organize their neither energy business nor spatial planning or whatever. We are, as Mr. Christian Syse said, there to listen to what the government is saying, and we are trying to live up to that. Then obviously there are lots of, for instance, in my own field, the energy field, I have lots of ideas and I have lots of sort of experience from many, many countries and many, many situations. But I, of course, in debates and in sort of discussions with the government, put forward those. But what comes out from us is very much listening to their requirements and what the Ukrainian government wants. We are not in the business of telling the Ukrainians what to do.
Thank you so much. And Debasri, if you can also share your thoughts regarding the World Bank.
From the World Bank's point of view, again, we work primarily with the government of Ukraine at the national level. But having said that, all of our engagements and projects are directly targeted to the beneficiaries, which is the residents. And as one of the major focus of the World Bank is to utilize its convening power, so we are trying our best to ensure that there is equal engagement across all organizations, which includes donors, IFIs, civil society organizations, and academia, and all of their inputs are taken into account during the design of the processes and the projects that the ministry directly works with us on. That is high level. With regards to urban recovery and urban reconstruction and support, which we've only just about started, we are very much encouraging the government to focus on citizen engagement, transparency, and accountability, and really bringing on board the voices from the ground, because those are the voices that ultimately determine the needs on the ground, and therefore how can determine how the very scarce financing can be best and most impactfully targeted. Separately, the World Bank also has its own processes, which include, for example, the stakeholder engagement planning, which happens extensively for all projects, as well as very extensive grievance redress mechanisms, which we ensure are built into all government systems that are employed in the projects that we support. Over.
Okay, thank you very much, Debashri. And second and last question, I would like to address to both Alexander and Dmitro. If you can name one indicator which will help to, let's say in 10 or 15 years, we can look at that indicator and say, okay, the reconstruction of Ukraine was fair and sustainable. What that indicator would be? You can name two.
Good question. Of course, I think that there might not be a very correct answer to this question, but to my opinion, if in some period of time we should conclude that recovery of Ukraine was successful, then we need to see the deviation between the resources that we are spent and the effect that we received. The balance. The main thing is the balance and the sustainability for such recovery measures. So that is my thoughts. Probably I'm wrong, but that is what I'm thinking of.
No, I'm sure there are not strictly right or wrong answers. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And Alexander, if you can also share your opinion.
Thank you for the question. I would say it's two indicators. They are connected. So one would be housing and energy poverty. The level should be below 5%. And that affordable rental public housing across Ukraine should be at least 15 to 20%.
I think this was a very insightful and data-rich session. Thank you so much to all our speakers for dedicating time to prepare very rich presentations and for sticking with us throughout the entire panel. And now we will have a 5-minute break, and then we will convene back here for the second session. For the second panel. Thank you so much.
Dear all, we have heard many interesting and relevant lectures now on how much damage it is in Ukraine. And we have got some ideas on how to best address the problems from all the bombs. One of the brains behind this program this evening is Ellen de Wiebe. She is the retired CEO of the Urban Planning and Building Department in the Oslo municipality. Unfortunately, she's not here today due to a minor accident. She sent me some words on her main thoughts on rebuilding and good urban planning processes. Her main priorities are that it is essential to collaborate across sectors in the society for creating successful urban planning processes. This means that higher education should collaborate with both the private and the public sector. Ellen de Wiebe also emphasized that much of the aid today, also from Norad Cement, is too sectorized. She wanted to inspire Norad to canalize their aid into collaboration across sectors. And the words from Ellen de Wiebe suits very well with how you work in Urban Coalition for Ukraine. Dear all, please get inspired by listening to CEO Fulko Treffers, who is leading 100 planners for a sustainable rebuilding.
Thanks a lot. Shall we clap? No, afterwards. Let's do it afterwards. No, don't worry. No. This is what we're going to do. This is amazing. I actually wanted to be a singer, but it's like I'm just a planner. I'm going to tell a little bit about why and who is Roskvit. A couple of slides. I've got 25 minutes. I hope you can tell me not 2 minutes, but like 5. That would be the best. And then some project impressions of what we are doing. So that is the what and how. And then looking forward. Not as blunt as our good friend Alexander Anisimov can do that, but still quite well decisive. Let's start here. This is my good friend Yegor. And this is what we were doing together. It's difficult. Here's no screen. What we were doing together. We were making architecture and urban plans together. He, as being an architect, very good in details, Ukrainian, me being already in Ukraine for years, since 2015, first working on a project on Mariupol, and then falling in love with the challenges and the opportunities in the country and the people like Yegor. Being also an architect and a visual artist, we were very close and very much working together. February 2022, he decided this. Stopped being an architect, stopped being who he was. He became, in his green suit, somebody else. Still alive, fortunately, not like all of the friends that I have that have taken these decisions. I see a few Ukrainians in here who know what we're talking about. I see also probably some non-Ukrainians who have some similar experience. I decided to stay in Ukraine, to be 100% involved in Ukraine. Not like that. It's not possible. I'm not a fighter. I don't have experience. I'm not well enough in Ukrainian language to start at a lower level. So I decided with my friend Oleg Drozdov that we should talk about recovery. Even 2 weeks after the full-scale invasion started, we started talking about it. The tanks were a few kilometers away from Kyiv, and that was already when we started thinking about what that really means. And when I listened to Alexander's speech or many other events where I am in Ukraine and around Europe, I feel I have to remind myself constantly, because I knew after 1 month,
this is going to be a frustrating ride. This is going to be a ride that is not going to be easy. It's not going to be a way where I can make like 70 or 80% of my ambitions. I would make sure that I save myself from depression because the systems are that complicated and the challenges are that big that we must be happy when only 5% of what we tell is going to happen. Only 5%. With that in mind, and with the Yegor in mind, I founded Roskvit, and I'm still working on it with a lot of pleasure, with a lot of energy, with a lot of people. We are a Ukrainian and international group of professionals. We have all smart people who know things about recovery from other post-war contexts in a wide variety of topics, but always related to spatial aspects. And we are now united for this Ukrainian recovery topic. We are a Kiev-based NGO, so we have people all around Europe and US, Canada, and some other countries in Asia. But we also have a team dedicated on a daily basis between, let's say, 20 and 45 people, depending on the amount of projects, working on daily basis in Ukraine on our projects. And we build partnerships, we work interdisciplinary, we have all kind of participatory approaches, and we connect to the urgent needs with long-term perspectives. I'll come back to that later. We build ourselves, our organization, on these five values. We're not commercially driven. We don't want to become the biggest architecture or urban planning office of Ukraine. Not at all. These are the things that we do it for, and this is what we constantly go back to if we are hesitating, if we should sign another memorandum with a new partner, or if we should team up in a new project with a specific municipality or oblast. Education, sustainability, the people, the network, and the ethical values are our base of the organization. And we do three things. We have three departments, you could say. And those five values were not in a particular order. These three also are not. They are constantly helping each other and supporting each other and overlapping. So it's action projects, which we call, so it's the design, it's the strategic projects that we do on all different scales. I will show a few in a few minutes. And we have our educational projects, not for students. We do give guest lectures in universities, but we are not trying to become like a second university or academy. There's quite a lot of interesting of those, and we're partnering up with them. But we do it for the professionals that want to learn more or that need to develop other capacities. So in municipalities, in oblasts, or in the provinces, or in architecture studios, engineers who want to know more about what recovery in the widest sense means. Sometimes, well, we'll get back to that. And then the last part is research. And research can be, let's say, the high-level research related to universities, where somebody takes like a topic for 4 years and really goes deep and long. It can also be that simple word that we hear more and more often that we really think, who's talking about that? Who knows much about that? Let's do it ourselves. We feel that we should go deep on that. And then we just build a group on something that we think is relevant at that moment and see how that leads to the next step. For example, participation, for example, related to Ukrainian context. For example, safety and security. That are typical research topics that we started out of curiosity, out of necessity, and then by building the knowledge and the team around it in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine, then at a certain moment we felt, okay, now we know enough to be able to include them into our other two sectors. Spatial elements are always there, but we look at urban recovery, or terrible word, urban, but anyway, in the widest sense of the word. So it's sociology, it's engineering, it's landscape, it's details of accessibility, it's also how to connect it to digital approaches. So we see the wide variety in a holistic way, of course. And we have had from the very beginning the understanding from our experts, from other situations, sometimes by person, sometimes by research, sometimes both, that it's too often happening that these projects that happen during the war on urgent needs, that they are kind of blocking the next steps. Unfortunately, there's too little links between the now and the then. And everybody knows it, and still we make the systems and decisions that still support this. I will always fight this. And even though there is really critical, urgent needs, I will always fight this picture. Seeing so many secondary, trivial disruptions after 10 years, 15 years. If you would have asked me the question at the last panel, so what would the KPI mean? What would be the measurement be if it's successful after 10 or 15 years? My only major measurement is if it's a war again. Because so many things are happening in the country, and if you think like a chess player 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, then you see that it leads very often, even though with all good intentions, that it leads very often to new disruptions in the country within one generation, unfortunately. We've seen it happening in other countries, and we see it happening here again, or we are afraid that it's happening here again as well. And we are constantly trying to look at it like this in everything we do, as hard as it sometimes is, because there's no money or there's no mandate or anything. Series of partners. I don't even think we have them all here anymore. Sorry for those you miss, but I have to update them again. And this is why we work. We don't focus on a specific area. We think this sector it's relevant everywhere, even in the occupied territories. Started with Mariupol 10 years ago. I started again 3.5 years ago with a project in Mariupol, made the vision for the urban future vision for Mariupol with the municipality in exile. And now also small communities that are displaced, small groups of people that want to know the future of themselves as a person, of a group, of their community, and how that relates to their places here, or maybe related to new opportunities somewhere else. Very complicated, very interesting, very personal questions. Urban planning is not only about the link to money, not only about the link to space, not only about the link to legislation. More and more, I believe that it's a link to humanity and psychology and sociology. We see it all around, and that's why we need to discuss it all around, because those people all are affected dramatically by this tragedy. Some projects. I chose 5 just by the scale, not by the importance, not by whatever, just by the scale to look a little bit. So we had this feeling at a certain moment, nobody's really talking about regional development plans, regional strategical thinking. But Ukraine has, at least for a couple of decades, a total different context. It's at the border of a continent. It's at the end of the continent. The relationship with Belarus and the relationship with Russia is changing for at least some decades. And what does that mean? And then we said, okay, talking about these things on the scale of the country, we were thinking, okay, but there's this one particular thing in the country which kind of binds it all, and that is the river, the Dnipro River, such a large symbol, but how is it working? And we started studying that, and we found a partner. We just did it. I mean, it's quite interesting for you to know, we just did it. We had no money, we had no partners yet, and we started looking at it. And then we found a partner who could support financially and by content, and it was Greenpeace. And it was very nice, and it felt very natural, although we would have never thought of looking at them as a donor, but they were a partner, and we came to that. And actually, first thought was already wrong, because the river was not binding the country only, but it's also connected to Russia and Belarus. So that was already the first thing. It's the symbol of one of the symbols of Ukraine, but it's also connected. So already the safety and security issues were there. Already the identity issues were there. Anyway, so it's and then the Kakhovka Dam was exploded. We didn't start it because of that. It happened during the process. So everything we had to adjust. Can you imagine that you have like a team of 8 people and you think you're doing something and every month you're doing something else? This is the reality in Ukraine. We know it. This is the reality in Ukraine. We cannot plan longer than 2 months ahead. We can have those values. We can throw a ball, but you never know who shoots the ball somewhere else, and then you have to run that way. And that's what we do. Actually, that's quite nice. To be honest, it's quite nice to be flexible and agile, to be fastly driving and then seeing, I could have thought about that maybe 1 year ago, but I didn't. And actually, could I? No, because I didn't think that this would happen. But I will adjust to that. It's the new reality. And you learn a lot from them for that, professionally, intellectually. And actually, this uncertainty is part of where we are now in Ukraine, and it's part of what is the future of the world as well. So if you are talking about learning from Ukraine, this is what we can learn from Ukraine, because I'm originally from the Netherlands. Flooding will be our future. It was our past, but it will be our future again. And we think we can solve this with all kind of concrete dams. But, well, anyway, let's be optimistic and flexible then. And we made this plan. We integrated from many different perspectives. It's 500 pages, so I have only 3 slides on this. But it's a plan with all mobility plans, with analysis, with experts. Space Syntax was involved. We had the water experts. We had these experts that have been looking at rivers that actually were no rivers anymore, because you could look at it as if it's more like 6 lakes in a row, because there were dams in between, and it was more like an energy system. It's an energy system that originally was something natural. And beyond, below this energy system, below the water, below those reservoirs, there's the history. There's all those small villages that have been flooded in the 50s and the 60s, like in many countries. This is not typical Soviet. This happened all around the world. Villages that are covering up the history of Ukraine. It's beautiful, it's terrible, it's emotional. And when I talk about this in Ukraine, then suddenly somebody says, this is where my family comes from. I've never been there because it's water now. But because of the previous picture, this partly opened up again. And people are also then seeing the opportunities, even in tragedy, when the flooding happened and the river was partly opened up, and they see that it also gives an opportunity for you know what I mean, archaeology, research, and that means identity. Key word in Ukraine, identity, who we are, understanding where we come from in this complicated context of being occupied, of being colonized by our neighbors for so long. And then in the end, our recommendations made all different kind of scenarios for this river. Big picture on a scale of 2/3 of the country, gave recommendations, not like one design, but more like recommendations in all those different sectors and how they could cooperate together. This document is just free to download on our website, roskvi.com. I say this not because you will all read it, but I say this, that is our approach. We do it and we share it. We don't want to keep it. It's a lot of documentation that is just out now, and you can all use it within your own projects as well. Then we went to Kremenchuk. I have to be fast. I'm sorry if you... Anyway.
One more project. And then...
Yeah, okay. Well, we went to Kremenchuk and zoomed in on a level of, let's say city center plus, and try to teach and work with the local NGOs, architects, and the municipality. And it was like a capacity building plus developing project together, where we integrated all the different aspects of climate-proof strategies, from mobility to landscape design, to water, to energy, to recreation, etc., etc. So the whole system was in the room, and we combined it in all different scales, until the level of specific building projects that were still going on. There were still people working on, because one of the projects, I think it's the other one, is it in this presentation? No, one of the projects on a similar scale like this is where now the Shakhtar football club is doing his new youth training center, and they're just building, they're just developing, so we can test new projects, not even in the most urgent elements, but where there's local money, local investments, local interest, because for some reason football is that important that they will do that. So you can imagine that having those partners in projects is very interesting to test the reality of what is going on in Ukraine and what can be the future in Ukrainian planning, designing, thinking, architecture, etc. And it started with like 5 people, maybe 8 in the first meetings, and we always do it with participatory approaches, but then in the end there were 200 people listening to our final presentations in the park. This is a presentation, a small part of the occupied territories, the most emotional thing that we did in 2024, which started as a thinking, how could our village look like after the war? And it ended with a box of memories and a healing process for those people that might never be able to return. We made it into a huge presentation and a huge exhibition by now that is now standing in the Netherlands also, because this is not about the traditional way of looking at urban planning. It's an architect or creative thinker that's being asked questions that is impossible to answer. But we answered it by this: maybe it will be returned, you can return, maybe not. There's still overlaps in that. We can look at them if we talk together. So that's what we try to do. It was a healing process for many of the people who live there, and it's now we try to copy this methodology, because all other occupied territories and all of the displaced communities are very interested to go through that process with their groups as well. And you see the maps don't look like normal urban planning maps. They look more like memories. They look like smell. If I could give them smells, I would give them smells. Flavors, but it's still also a project plan. So if it's available, if for some reason, if at a certain moment we can go back, then these are the steps to take. This is the first part we can already do now, and if it stops here, then it's also fine. And then we still have all that material that represents what we are and where we come from, and which is still good. And these are the steps that when we can open it up, then step by step we can rebuild something that looked like the place where we came from. All these elements we learn and we do. So 3.5 years ago, it was like learning from all those experts from abroad. Now we learn from ourselves on our own projects, and we bring them into methodologies, into knowledge platforms, in websites, and we share it. They are not all perfect, but we do it the Ukrainian way. If 90% is good enough, then it's good enough. We don't talk rubbish, but we are aware of our limits in time, sometimes in capacity, sometimes in budget. So this one needs a revise, but we made this in the first 6 months after the full-scale invasion. So we're not unhappy with it at all, because it's used all around the country, but it needs a new version. And you can see all those different elements on our website. And then later, the last one is two pictures of 2 even smaller scales, an art therapy center, bio-based, to be built in Lviv. We can find the right donor to really build it. And this is where we just do it. We just found a way how to organize it. And in this therapy center, which is urgently needed in Ukraine, I mean, literally 100% of my colleagues in Ukraine is seeing a shrink. So to be able to keep your head up, these places are relevant and these places are necessary. And if you can build them in the right way and not like a concrete leftover abandoned building, then it will help their recovery as well. Same as the shelters. I'm at this moment giving lectures pretty much every 2 days about shelters, that they are used to look like this, should look like this, but this is I have only 2 examples in Ukraine which are really comfortable, nice place. I have a whole methodology built for that, we have, but actually this is the reality. This is my nearest shelter in Kiev, where I should go when the air alarm goes off.
I don't even want to go there. It's so unpleasant. I get more scared to go there than I would just stay in my bed and hear the bombs flying over. So the whole thing is not congruent, it's not coherent, it's not fitting the legal aspects as well. Shelters, different topic, 3 hours more lectures for me if you wanted. Recommendations. Oh, this is the last one actually. Interesting. You saw them all 10 already, but it's 10. We have the first two first. Build trust via projects. I strongly believe just not via projects, not via anything else. Do something, and that will lead to exchange between partners in Ukraine and partners between in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine. This value of the network is critical for us. Education, capacity building programs, it's the longest sustainable part that we can imagine. And it's really paying off. We are doing several of those programs, and the energy that we get back, the energy that the people have is amazing. And here in those educational projects is what I strongly believe in. This I already ready to explain to you. Connect those two. If you look at only one, it will make too little sense, and we miss opportunities. Actually, we even block future development. Holistic, integrated, whatever term you give to it, physical, social, economical, culture, look at it all at once. This is not typical Ukrainian, to be honest. This is what we are not so good at in Kiev or in whatever country, whatever city. This is my hardest part when I'm talking to Ukrainians. It's a combination of legislation and finances that you just have to take care of. Just take care of it. This is also where internationals can come in. I mean, here less physical, sometimes also less, but these two we can support from the international part as well. And I tell to all of them, don't talk, please. It's 4 years now. Don't ask for a needs assessment. Don't ask for what is really what the Ukrainians want. We've told it enough. I feel more than enough Ukrainian to be able to say that. We've told that enough. Be very cautious. Another mayor that you ask, please, what are your needs now? They say it 5 times a day, and I'm not joking here. They say it all the time. Do your homework, find it out yourself, all the reports are there, and don't bother, just act. I'm sorry. Do it in a participatory way after that. Democratic, fully. They love it, they don't know how very often, but they love it. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about it, and they say it's not Ukraine. It is. From a historical point of view, by the Tolokas, if you look the word up, it is done like that. So, but it's very often a matter of knowing the tools and having the experience, and then you can scale up. We are beyond the pilot project phase. We are beyond these first 2 years of trying a little bit, testing a little bit. We have to scale up. Not only these 2, 3, 5 municipalities that are proactive. Scale up. I don't say you don't. I've seen some presentation, I've seen some work also from new regions, but this is very often too much neglected. And again, UN Habitat thinks about 5 new Homadas. Come on, guys, UN Habitat, good partners of mine. You're the ones that should now say, we do 500 Homadas, because there are more than enough questions. Pre-last, be in Ukraine. It's the only place where you can really understand, feel what is needed. You don't have to ask it anymore. And also for those Ukrainians who left Ukraine in 2022 for very good reasons, or maybe before, I will never blame them. But the country has changed dramatically. And if you don't go up and down, often enough, you will miss the sense of understanding, maybe even the sense of urgency. And even when I'm not in Ukraine for a couple of weeks, last summer, I noticed I wasn't in Ukraine for 3.5 weeks. I was thinking, wow, now I go back and it's really becoming dangerous right now. I was there for one day and said, oh no, it's just like always. the news, everything that you read on your Telegram channels, the Facebook channels, the news in the traditional media, the news takes you over, and then suddenly you're not in Ukraine anymore. You don't experience what is really happening. And the things that are happening are both tragedies, but also beautiful emotions of life and the real hard but intense life that I recommend everybody. I love it there, not only because of the Ukrainian mentality, because this intensity is something that makes you feel alive, and it's beautiful. And then the last one is simple. Be nice. Be human. Be with them, with us, with you. I see a few Ukrainians in the room. And do it from that perspective, not because of the rule that your minister said, that it's within your mandate. Do it because of the heart and because of you're a human, and there's some humans over there that need something but can give a lot back to you as well.
Thank you so much, Folko, for this inspiring and emotional, engaging talk. I think you moved all of us, and you also got some laughter among the audience when you talked about this catastrophic subject. Okay, so now I'm going to share a personal story for you all. Earlier in my life, I worked as a classical pianist for several years. And one of my favorite piano pieces was The Great Gate of Kiev by Modest Mussorgsky. So for 10 years, I played and expressed all these millions of happy Ukrainians strolling around among their beautiful buildings. And I could never imagine that I would, in the future, right now, stand here and present a speaker who actually repairs holes in those beautiful buildings. And that the Ukrainian people, they aren't happy anymore. So it's a huge contrast for me. But that's how the world has become in our times. I'm very impressed by your work and you brave to rebuild, Aliona. And perhaps sometime in the future, culture and music once again create peace between people and between countries. Dear all, please listen to CEO Aliona Kritschuk from Brave to Rebuild.
First of all, I want to thank you all because, we know from our governments there are to thank words for the donors, for the supporters, for your country. But I want to thank you personally for having this interest and support of your personal, a person for our country and for our history that we are doing now. And we are standing also because of your interest. It's not going away. Even someone is telling that Europe is already tired of Ukrainian war. I see here that is not. And it's give us, and I will bring this support back to my people who are for my team, for my volunteers there. So thank you. I'm Alona, I'm Ukrainian. And it's also organization Brave to Rebuild that was started in 2022. Me and my friend, we just sit in a car after the occupation of Kiev and just went to the Bucha, Irpin, Borodyanka, all these cities that were heavily damaged. And what Fulke was already telling you, that seeing in the news and seeing by yourself, it's so differs. So it impacted me heavily, and we started volunteering there. We started helping people with light repairments, like roof doors that was hit by Russian soldiers, to invade the houses, like windows that was damaged by shellings, etc. And for knowing, I'm not an architect. I'm not a builder. Before creating this organization, I was never doing repairment, even in my own apartment. I'm from IT, actually. So, but this shift, it changed a lot of lives, and it's also changed mine. And in 2022, when I was grabbing with ashes with my hands, there was a Lugano conference where everyone was thinking about that peace will be, very soon, and we need to talk about rebuilding Ukraine, and it was whole Lugano URC conference was about it, and they created this principle of building back better. And when they're presenting this building back better, I really don't understand what is on practice, what is on the land, what is in the object, what is in the cities, how it looks like. And when we started in our organization, from the volunteer initiative, we became a foundation, Brave to Rebuild. My main task was to research what is on practice, what is on the field. And for now, 3 years later, this is the principles that we are doing them. So we have practical cases of every of this principle, and we're sharing it with you because it's from the social objects or private housing. It can goes up for the urban planning. Because now in Ukraine, urban planning, it's more theoretical than a practical thing. More practical is rebuilding the objects, rebuilding schools, hospitals, rebuilding houses. So these are participation, partnership, inclusivity, rethinking the space. It was what about Fulke telling that our shelters became social hubs, they became schools for children. So energy efficiency, it's a matter of survival now for us, not only about green future of the world. Environmental sustainability, also cultural memory and memorization. We have a huge, trend for memorialization, for remembering those who have fallen in this war and previous wars with Russia. Security and safety and volunteering. Because it's what's a lot of initiatives are started from the volunteering and then becoming big projects that ensures our future and ensures all these principles that are given here. So it's the results of our years. So we're working mainly, so we're based in Kyiv, but we work mainly in the Hromadas. Hromadas is municipalities that includes villages and cities in them. So it's bigger than a city, and so have this urban area and some rural area around, which are small, which are 50 to 70,000 of people, and so they don't have enough capacity. Even they don't have building departments in their in municipalities. So we are this bridge from the donors' money, to ensuring that the project will be done, because there is a lot of reporting system, monitoring, holding on this project. So, and these are our results, and the regions we are working. So it's have also a map of our damages. So you see, we are working in the regions that are heavily damaged. This is our top priority for now. So what we do, so we still have volunteer community. Right now they're helping with the shellings in Kyiv, because as you may seen, they happens in us once a week, actually. So we have professional department that makes repairments and modernization of social infrastructure, like schools, hospitals. And we're engaging, make this community engagement, needs assessments. So we communicate with our municipalities, and help them, to make their plans more inclusive and more stable, and we developing recovery strategies also like for like buildings. For example, now we're developing the strategy for the I hope future rehabilitation center in one hospital in Zhytomyr Oblast. Probably we think it will be from the wood because I see your airport and I'm okay. I want this project to be happened because in Ukraine, you know, we don't have you can't build from the wood upper than 2 floors. So 2 floors are maximum to build from the wood. And in case of someone interesting, because I was interested, when the drones shells the wooden object, it damages as well as concrete. So it's no main difference when it's damaged the like wooden building or the concrete building. So I have the principles that I want like to share with you in the beginning and others like in the end, if in case I won't have enough time. So it's one of our like key projects. It's administrative service center. It wasn't hit. It wasn't damaged, but due to a lot of IDPs, it needed to be modernized, and GIZ financed the modernization of this building. So, and why I'm talking about participation, because we set in a lot of projects, and I will give examples. This stage from the donor side or even from the community side, okay, it's very shortened. So due to different reasons, it's it's plans because it's rather or it's winter is coming or financing is like lack of financing or something like that. So this phase of designing, of planning, of making community to be engaged is shortens, and a lot of projects suffer from this. And I really thankful because they are making it for this planning what is ahead of the project that actually happens, because in reality it's so short in time that the communities, the NGOs, they don't have opportunity to say what are real their needs, how they want to see this building to be rebuilt. And you see, so we planned, so with the municipalities, we changed the way the road goes. So we made the square, they made the square inclusive, and I will later go so that municipalities take their own role in this. So it's not about donor coming and saying, okay, this is your administrative center, opened, okay. So, but for the municipality to take responsibility of this, they need to be involved from the beginning. And this is the case when what we drew with them and what happened in the end, and now they're still doing this square around to make it more inclusive, make it like it was planned. But what happens when it doesn't goes? Because we were also making monitoring of objects that were reconstructed, renovated, and we saw that in a lot of things there is a lack of lack of participatory activities like surveys, interviews, even with the personnel of this hospital or the teachers or the children of the school. Children are always excluded from any participations, etc. And it's, but who are better, who will use the school after? So it's maybe the key of my presentations to have this participatory phase bigger and actually to make it right, to make it not only about the numbers, official numbers that are given by the municipalities, but also to talk with the people who are using these buildings, because they have, they know how they want to use it in the way of build back better. And so for example, this is a school which is renovated by a very big donor. It's a ZK success school, but it's so overloaded by this inclusiveness. So it's not. usable. It's not washable. Children. Yeah, so yeah, you can understand. So, and it's because in the middle of this, like, they were not talking with administration, not talking with people, not they were not talking with NGOs that are good because there are experts who actually use this, and we have like several videos, like when this person goes in this like school and tell us, okay, this I can use, this I can't use, and this floor is make me going like on a word. So, and it's so when it's not done, both from the community side and from the donor side, there are such mistakes, and we have a lot of examples of this. It's our so, like, yes, I told about inclusivity, and I think you know about inclusiveness better than we are. But my main idea here, we have like NGOs, and we have like people who can, advising before how it's not only in the Ukrainian building law, but how it is in practice. And we see that it's not not always included in this. Their voice is not always included in these plans of inclusiveness. So, and about partnerships, it's also. 5 minutes. Okay, so partnerships. Okay, so you understand. Okay, with partnerships, I will tell you what's going on when it's not, where there is no partnership. There is a shelter that was made by 4 different donors during these days, and you can see everyone did it by their guidelines. And not even parallelly with each other. And now they have shelter of different pieces which were not even connecting with each other. So partnerships are way of important even between not only between NGOs, etc., but even between you when you are doing such projects in Ukraine. And volunteering, so we have a lot of international volunteers from Europe, from Canada, US, Australia, who are coming now to Kyiv and to Ukraine and helping Ukrainian people. In my organization, it's mostly cleaning the debris and participating in light repairs and closing the windows after the shellings. And we now started the global giving campaign, and they double all the donations that are made. And for our campaign, we need some donations from Europe, from abroad, not from Ukraine. It's their, method. So if you can, even €1-2 to donate, there is a QR code. Okay, I see. And about safety, it's my topic. We have a lot of shelters that are not in a good way. But what I already told to Anna, and I will tell every one of you. So only after the full-scale invasions, we started to make changes in our building law about what houses shelters. Simple shelters, bigger shelters, how they should be done. And in the Fulkas presentation was a mobile shelter from the concrete on the streets. And only this August, in our construction codes, they were included in our construction codes. Can you imagine, 4 years? So, and my proposition for you, it's probably to start thinking what in your law, what in your building codes, what in your certifications, what can be changed or should be done in case of war. In case of drones flying and hitting the objects and people need to go to the shelter. It's better to start it now because I know that in European law you have gap in this. So it's better to start it now, even on theoretically, And I really hope it will never be used and for you, because Russia will be, demolished and destroyed, and the empire will be fallen. But it's my recommendation, probably to start creating such plans for the shelters, housing, not to waste time of doing nothing because you don't have proper codes and proper law here. Already told about energy, about all this. So thank you very much for having me here and to listening to these practical things. So it's all things that we are doing with our hands on the ground. And the reason why I came here to 24 hours of travels, I wanted to share you this connection and this partnership, this collaboration, because one side is when you are seeing us on the news or on the video, and also when we are coming for you and we are the live examples that we want to collaborate. We want to share with you not only our strategy but also our perspectives, in our future. So thank you very much. You can, This is our contacts. If you want to have a photo, probably you will need some local partner in Ukraine. So have this slide for you can ask for me everything, what questions you will have to find some partners or some information about Ukraine. We'll be totally glad to provide you with this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aliona. Very, very impressive. My name is Nico Nyström. I'm a long-term friend of Ukraine. My company, Itera, we have been established in Ukraine for 17 years now. We have 200 employees there in Kyiv and Lviv, and we're engaged in many different kinds of rebuilding Ukraine initiatives, in addition to doing the software development work that is the actual reason why we are there. I would now like to move forward and get started with our last session now with Francesca Pintus. She will present us one concrete urban planning case, the Mykolaiv urban concept.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. And thank you so much for having me here today. It's an honor to be part of your very interesting group of panelists. So I'm an architect and an urban designer. I'm based in Milan, and I work for One Works, which is one of the largest architectural practices here in Italy. And today I will be talking very briefly, I promise, about the work we did with the UN for the city of Mykolaiv. So I will share my screen, and please let me know once it's on. I won't be able to see your camera anymore, so I hope you can see everything full screen now. Okay, so as I was saying, this project was implemented by the UN. We got a fund from the German government, and we were supported by GIZ, like other projects that we heard about today. We have a foundation called the One Works Foundation that was the project lead. And then, of course, we decided to involve as many academic and private partners as possible to make sure that we could, approach this concept master plan from all the different angles that we believe are needed in a serious work of this type. So in case you're not familiar with Mykolaiv, I will just give you a very brief introduction to let you understand what Mykolaiv used to be and what it was like before the conflict started. So historically, Mykolaiv was one of the most important shipbuilding centers, not only within Ukraine, but within the whole Soviet Union and the Black Sea, and a crucial wheat production and maritime trade hub. So before the war, it was a, let's say, medium-sized city, about 476,000 inhabitants. Then, of course, the conflict hit heavily here as well. About 50% of the population left in 2022. However, Mykolaiv is located close to Kherson. You might be familiar with Kherson. At the beginning of the conflict, the Russian army bombed a massive dam in that region that caused extensive flooding of the Kherson region. So a lot of the population from Kherson actually moved up to Mykolaiv, which was one of the closest larger city centers around. And so now the population overall is pretty much as it used to be before the conflict. So what is the challenge? Is with the reconstruction, once the conflict is over, is try to convince people who left to come back to Mykolaiv, but also people who have moved to Mykolaiv to stay because they found a new home and they want to stay there. So what are we envisaging for Mykolaiv? Of course, we heard today about sustainability, and that's something that we cannot, ignore moving forward. But also we want to try and push Mykolaiv towards a diversified economy, because when the Soviet Union collapsed, the market of the shipbuilding industry that was so key to the city inevitably crumbled. And so the city, even before the conflict, was really suffering from an economic decline because it was sort of monofunctional. So what we're suggesting is that we don't lose sight of this history, this know-how, but we sort of scale back, maybe from large vessel shipbuilding to tourist yacht production, and to really play this very important relationship that the city has with its two rivers. Here you see a render of a part of the city, a peninsula between these two rivers. And this was a very clear message we got from the local municipality at the beginning of the project. So Mykolaiv does not want to lose its industrial heritage, and it wants to, reach a new potential during reconstruction. And so what we're trying to do is to transform the city into a vibrant and resilient center, fostering really inclusive growth. So we started with extensive background studies. We moved between demographic scenarios, trying to understand whether it was reasonable to believe that the city would grow a lot or it would shrink a lot. And actually the results were that the population variation is not anticipated to be that massive. And also trying to understand which sectors in the economy could be, more relevant for the future development of the city. As I mentioned before, the key element would be here to try and maintain this shipbuilding industry and heritage and language, and being able to transform that into a strong character for the city. This is an image of the historical shipyard within Mykolaiv. Then we started to look at the natural environment, and the interesting thing is that the municipal territory is only occupied by buildings by only a third, pretty much. Everything else is open space, either water or green spaces. And so it's not uncommon to see in Mykolaiv something like this: low density, large parks, large squares, and relatively reduced amount of buildings around them. However, what we found out was that the ecological quality of these public spaces and green spaces is actually pretty low, and this is not uncommon in an ex-industrial city such as Mykolaiv. And then we started to also analyze the mobility system in terms of roads, public transport, and walkability. And in particular, the issue with Mykolaiv was that historically, the industrial port of the city was in the city center. And that causes today still a lot of heavy traffic coming through the city center, which is really an issue for walkability, for safety, but also for the quality of air. So we started to try and think what we could do to change this in the future. And this is an example of what the transport system in particular looks like. So to the left, you see the standard system that were there before the conflict, and to the right, actually some buses that were recently donated by the Danish government and that are able to run on a battery even when there is a blackout for a certain amount of time or a certain length in terms of kilometers. So there is already an improvement, but of course what we tried to do was to establish a system, a network, and not just having random small initiatives that are beneficial, of course, in the short term, but that don't really talk to a systematic approach. And the last thing I wanted to mention about the transport system, or rather the walkability, is also things that for us as Europeans might be, you know, not even a problem at times, which is, for instance, the quality of sidewalks. Of course, people will not cycle or will not walk if the infrastructure does not allow you to do that safely. And this is just a standard example of what the quality of the sidewalks in Mykolaiv at the moment is like. Then we proceeded through a thorough analysis of the different areas of the city. And it was interesting to see how the opinion of Mykolaiv's inhabitants of their own neighborhood was really different depending on where they lived. So, for instance, if in the city center, everybody felt pretty, you know, happy about, you know, the provision of historical and cultural facilities, in the periphery of the city, the thing that people are most excited about is the waste collection service. And this really tells you something about, you know, what's out there for people to aspire, depending on where they're located in the city. And we can see this also from some images that we've put together. So, for instance, this is the city center. So a lot of historical buildings, high quality public realm, a well-balanced, proportion of built space and open space. And then you moved further down and you have these very typical monofunctional residential Soviet blocks that don't leave much space for interaction. And further down as well, being this also a touristic destination, you have a lot of sprawl that, provide some nice little houses, but at the same time, they do not provide what's needed in a city in terms of services, etc. What we did was also we ran an analysis on the social infrastructure provision, trying to understand where this is working and where this is not. So what you see on the left in blue is where it's relatively easy to walk to a social infrastructure destination that might be a school, a hospital, etc. And in pink, where it's not that easy to do so. And so that helped us try to understand where we should focus our attention. For instance, this is a clinic. You would imagine a clinic being, easily reachable by walking and, within a dense urban area. But to the right, you see, what is the surrounding of this clinic. So not easy or safe ways to get there walking, and not enough density around this clinic, which is really a missed opportunity. And then, of course, being this a city, going through a conflict, we did ask our question, okay, should we start from the conflict damages? So thanks to a very, helpful collaboration from the municipality, we were able to track down through a GIS system the location and the intensity of the damage, and also understanding what was hit. So whether there was a residential area, community facility, commercial areas, etc. And of course, like in so many other cities in Ukraine, a lot of the infrastructure was hit. This is a picture of the airport that, of course, is not ready to be used anytime soon. There were damages to, historical buildings. To the right, you see a whole roof that collapsed in one of the monuments of the city. These are hospitals and hotels, and again, residential buildings that are in a diverse range of destruction. However, all of this to say that what we did realize at the end was that there was no specific area of the city that was completely destroyed, and that would justify a starting point for our reconstruction strategy. So what we did was to sort of step back, and we decided to actually think about what the city will need irrespectively of the conflict, meaning Mykolaiv needed a change even before the conflict. So we started to focus on that. What can we do to help Mykolaiv, live again and be better as soon as the conflict is over? And then we left, the management and the reaction to immediate needs to somebody else. We decided we could not do all. And so what we offered was instead an international sort of best practice approach to the reconstruction in terms of, urban regeneration of the city. So we started with the urban design strategy per se. We established project pillars that go from innovation and industry development, again, linked to the history of the city, culture and environmental heritage, again, given the proximity, especially to the river and the countryside, sustainable mobility, social aspects, sustainable infrastructure, and we worked on this with our partners at COWI. And last but not least, governance, that we don't have much control of as designers, but we always try to remark that for the municipality to be aware of the fact that it's their responsibility moving forward to make sure that, all these good ideas are implemented properly. And at the same time, they will need help, from the upper levels. So we came up through extensive stakeholder engagement with what we called themes for urban rebirth that are very specific to the city of Mykolaiv. The first point was giving the riverfront back to the community. And this is because being Mykolaiv an industrial city, a port mainly, an industrial port, a lot of its riverfront was actually and is actually not accessible to the public. And this is really something that the local population feel close to their heart. They want to be able to enjoy and to live the river much more than they are now.
Francesca, we need to start closing up now.
Okay, sure. I'll move on. So again, we started to decide where to focus our attention in terms of different strategies. We went through a landscape strategy as well, trying to understand, what the main elements were, the river, but also bringing the green into the city and, enhancing the quality of this green. And then in terms of a mobility strategy as well, as I said before, redirecting heavy traffic, promoting intermodality that at the moment does not exist, and developing a proper and efficient local transport system through, a network that can really provide equal opportunities to people living in different areas. Last but not least, I did mention extensive stakeholder engagement. So we did an online survey at the beginning of the project, and we received some 14,000 responses. And this really gives you an idea as to how the people of Mykolaiv, also people who left the city, really want to be engaged and really want to be part of this, movement of change. We did some specific surveys about specific themes, such as housing, because it's a theme that people are particularly close to. And also we actually asked people to track down on maps, where do they live, where do they go to work, how do they go from A to B, and what are the areas they suggest we focus on in terms of pilot projects. And so based also on these recommendations and discussions with the municipality, we highlighted a few sites that will be up for pilot projects. Some of these we've developed us already, also through some extra UNDP funds. But this would be just a starting point for, Mykolaiv to start living again. So I hope that gave you an overall idea as to what our work was like. And of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Francesca. We are now getting to the end of our program. We have a challenge, at least my personal subjective observation is that when discussing with Ukrainians, it's most important to spend time on the most important topics and have good discussions and find good solutions. For Norwegians, keeping the agenda, going through all the agenda points and finishing on time is extremely important. And if we don't manage to cover everything, we can always book a new meeting and continue discussing. But we have the technical team confirmed. We have a lot of participants in the streaming, and it's of course even more challenging to sit following something digitally. So we need to respect the time. I would like to end this part of the presentation by asking one final question to all of you who presented now, and I would like to focus on the positives. In all this situation, given the situation now, I'm focusing on rebuilding Ukraine. What are the most positive and encouraging signs you see related to this whole situation now?
Well, maybe I'll start.
Perfect.
I think what was really encouraging for us, again, was on one hand, the participation of the local citizens, and we've heard this before as well, even people who are not experts, who've never done anything like that before, really want to be part of the conversation. They were never given the chance before, and they understand the value of being able to express their thoughts. And at the same time, also a very proactive approach from the local municipality that I think it's crucial for these studies and these projects to then being implemented properly. So for us, it was really a great surprise, and I do wish them all the best. Even if we're not involved in the future, I think there is some solid work there that we did collectively that can help them in bring their enthusiasm forward for sure.
Very good. Thank you. Aliona, what do you think?
For me, it's. I hope that rebuilding of Ukraine will, unite a lot of countries. It now unites in different projects, so unites in a way, so more partnerships, more collaboration, more discussing what is really Build Back Better, and making more this inclusiveness in this. So and making, I hope in the future, Ukraine as a country where all, your probably fantastic projects or projects of your dreams, of projects that were on the paper somewhere in universities, that they can come true. So it's experimental land to make the lightest projects and more inspiring one in Ukraine back then, when the active hot phase will be finished. And for me personally, it's more about how many people are devoted now for rebuilding Ukraine, even during this hot phase, for these volunteers who are coming, professional constructors also, who are coming to Ukraine to do, to help something right now. And because due to mobilization, we have so much shortage of professional builders that can help with these projects now. So I think this two parts for the future of experimental land, and for now, for the support, for me, it's most positive.
Honored to be the last one here, almost trying to sit down. What Francesca says about participation is directly, and also in education, you feel the energy of the population, very often also the younger generation, but not only, is all generations, they are actively involved, they want to protect something, and they want to rethink and look forward. That energy is amazing. That's where you do it for, looking in people's eyes and feeling that something is possible. On the other hand, on a meta level, I would say the other most positive thing is that we can learn a lot from Ukraine by seeing, not because they are different people, no, but they are in a different context, and they've been living in a different context for some centuries, and that gave them some learning skills, that gave them some capacities, and they have to use them. And we can look at that as very, very interesting for us as Norwegians or as Dutch people or Americans to really learn from, carefully look what that means. First of all, because dangerous times are ahead of us, some dark times maybe. I don't want to quote Harry Potter, but there, on the other hand, also in these times, in normal times, there's a lot that you can do differently than the way that your culture has taught you. And Ukraine is this beautiful example that is close enough, that is very recognizable, but that's distant enough that, and now in a totally different context, that it is totally different, and that is something really to learn from. And I said it before. I would really, I would love you to experience that yourself. It's for me the most beautiful learning insight for me as a person, and I can only hope that for everyone.
Thank you so much. That's a good way to wrap it all up.
So thank you all for this inspiring seminar. It has been for a long time now. I can see you are tired. But my task is to sum this up in an inspiring way for you all. And therefore I have invited first Sergei Samulko. You are from the Ukrainian Association in Norway. Yeah. So I would like to ask you to sum this up and to answer, do you think this seminar could be interesting for people living in Ukraine, either now or in the future?
Yeah. Thank you very much for invitation, and it's a great pleasure to be here and to be invited. I'm totally confident that this kind of discussion extremely important for Ukrainians, and also it's important for people who is living and outside of Ukraine. What I hear here, it's we saw great presentations and good overviews that war brought a lot of grief to Ukraine, unfortunately. At the same time, we react on urgent needs, and it's important because we are in the war and people suffering. But we cannot put only urgent needs. We need to do it with long-term perspective. At the same time, we need to, when we do this, we need to build our country better. And of course, during this rebuilding, we need to follow sustainability rules and sustainability strategies in urban rebuild strategies. So I'm really proud to be here. I really heard a lot of good thoughts and ideas. And we need to keep the discussions when war will over, and will over on winning of Ukraine, of course. We need to start rebuilding and make our Ukraine better, or my homeland better. Yeah, thank you very much.
And I also asked Lene Wetland from the Norwegian Helsinki Committee to sum this up and give some reflections. Because many have called the rebuilding and reconstruction of Ukraine the biggest construction ground in Europe. And there are many actors eager to contribute with their companies to the state support. We have discussed some of the practical challenges here today. But where do you in NHC put your focus, or the civil society?
Thank you. Thank you for a very interesting discussion today. I think some of the photos that we have seen here today kind of unite two of the very most important things that we talk about here, because the missiles and drones and equipment that is used to harm Ukraine and the buildings in Ukraine have European parts in them, despite of sanctions. And it's a huge reconstruction ground, and there will be a lot of money invested in reconstruction of Ukraine. And it's very important that the companies that do this reconstruction have not been taking part in evasion of sanctions, in grave corruption, or even worse, crimes against humanity, by supporting these weapons that are actually ruining the buildings or blowing off the Kakhovka Dam. So in having discussed all these practical and geographical and spatial discussions, this is very important. And I also want to encourage everyone who has a stake in this to consider who are the companies that are doing the reconstruction. Where do they take the money from? Who are their companies? How do they approach this reconstruction process? Because we all have very good intentions with everything that we do. Cooperation with local civil society is so important, because local civil society, local journalists are those that see what is needed, how should buildings be reconstructed, how is actually better. And local journalists are those that expose the corruption, not only from international companies, Western companies, but also unfortunately from some of the Ukrainian authorities, as we have seen very recently. So these are all very important matters also to have in mind, but not to end on this so sad note. It is very comforting and very important to see what Ukrainian civil society is doing and all the great efforts that are taking place. Volunteers in Ukraine and traveling from all over the world. This just shows that we are in it together to build Ukraine back. So thank you.
So thank you all for being here so long. If you want to, you can stay and eat some more food and have a chat and have a nice time, or yeah, do whatever you like. Thank you very much.